Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for a discussion about collecting and analyzing cross-functional metrics and maintaining accountability while aligning engineering and business performance through the use of value streams. I'm Dave Rubenstein, editor-in-chief of SD Times. Joining me today are two members of the team at value stream intelligence company Allstacks. With us are Adam Dahlgren, who's the chief operating officer, and Parker Ennis, director of product marketing. Thanks for being here, guys.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks for having us, Dave. We've got the purple people eaters here.
Great. So before we get started, I just want to let the folks know that this is going to be recorded. So it'll be available on demand on the sdtimes.com website probably by tomorrow. And second, if you have any questions at all during the presentation, just post them in the chat and we'll jump right on them so we can answer as many of your questions as you have. All right, so here we go. Allstacks has been on the cutting edge of value stream platforms with its notion of value stream intelligence. So it's not just about collecting metrics, but presenting them in a way that's actionable as organizations seek to continuously improve. So let's get started, guys. Parker, tell us a little bit about yourselves and how Allstacks recognize this emerging value stream management space.
Sure. Thanks, Dave. Allstacks is a value stream intelligence platform, as you mentioned. And I always like to start with saying that we turn the lights on with your engineering data. It's a phrase that we use pretty commonly. And what that means is we let visibility come to the forefront of what you're doing with your engineering workflows and your metrics. So we align that engineering work to business outcomes in a way that fosters collaboration, communication, and ultimately enables action to be taken from the data and the metrics that are surfaced. And we see, value stream management, or what we call value stream intelligence, as an evolution of where we're going with something like DevOps, right? Something that's very common in the market today, where companies are still having to compete in markets and move faster. We hear about that a lot. And as consumers, we demand that things are there quicker and faster as well. And so that digital presence and understanding how you're delivering value and how that ends up in the hands of end users is extremely important in order to actually be able to deliver software better and faster. So, we see this category of value stream management becoming more and more important over the next 5 years, especially, and even in the immediate future. And, I also like to add in a little unique take that we're going to see a similar trend that we've seen with DevOps, where more companies are embracing those DevOps principles, optimizing tools, people, and processes. You see companies maturing their software delivery practices and taking that more seriously. So, CI/CD is table stakes, for instance, where it used to be something that was a goal that may have been more difficult for certain organizations to achieve. And so, we've got to automate all the things. We've got to collaborate. We've got to communicate better. We know these things. And I think this maturity with VSM is going the same direction. So, any vertical, any industry, any organization, adoption of value stream management platforms is going to grow exponentially. And then, we see that connection between the engineering side and the business side to be integral.
That's the most important part, right? So, Dave, we were talking about this before we went live about your, the VSM con that was running yesterday, and year over year, the changes in the market, and what we were talking about a year ago, saying it's probably about time that this breaks through as a core concept. Is it starting to click in the boardroom? Is it starting to click with the business executives? And then boom, a year later, everybody's out here talking business agility. And we're realizing, these business agility messages that are being bandied about, not just bandied about, but actually they have weight now with the people who you want to be in business with in the enterprise. They're like, these business agility problems are often value stream use cases that involve tying a bunch of data streams together to understand what's going well, what's not going well. Am I getting what I believe I'm signed up for, right? Am I investing in the right places? Seemingly simple questions that are very difficult to answer historically in the enterprise, especially because of the complexity, because of the size of the data and just all the moving parts.
Right. Yeah, we heard from a bunch of people who were saying things like, well, value stream management is the cherry on the DevOps cake. where it just kind of took everything to a different level, which was fine from an engineering and software delivery perspective. But as you said, we're now seeing how we're connecting that with business outcomes. And look, we've been covering this space for 20 years here at SD Times, and one of the biggest hurdles was always the disconnect between IT and what business wanted, because they were using different tools, didn't speak the same language, couldn't have insights into the other side of what's going on. And even if they did have insight, they couldn't really understand what developers were doing from the business side. So value stream intelligence seems to be the bridge, the long-awaited bridge to get the two sides to come together.
Precisely.
Yeah. So obviously it's very important to align engineering and the business, but yet this still seems to be kind of a challenge for a lot of people. Why is it so difficult?
Yeah, I love this question, and so I'll give a brief little historical context that I think will be a good way to describe this, and it kind of comes down to why Allstacks was created in the first place. So our CEO and co-founder was working in the healthcare field. Senior engineering role, had a seat at the table with leadership. And obviously you're discussing roadmaps, strategic priorities, what's important to the business, and sales and marketing would come with these beautiful slide decks, metrics, numbers, graphs, and show, tangible data to back up, questions they were asked, like, how are we delivering on X project? Where can we improve productivity and efficiency here? And, and how are we delivering that value? And it was hard for the engineering side to answer those questions, and it shouldn't be. And so that was kind of antithesis and the reason that Allstacks was created, and understanding that disconnect between the engineering side of the house and the go-to-market teams or the business side, and wanted to create a way to bring data to the table and give engineering a voice in that boardroom.
Right. And, it boils down to complexity. Largely, right? So we just find that the more complex business set of business units, use cases, teams, processes, the more value there is to be captured from putting these principles in place. And like Parker was saying earlier, simply turning the lights on. It is amazing how difficult it is for people in these large, complex enterprises to even be able to benchmark their current state. Yeah. How wrong they often are just about where they think they're the things that are on fire. They're often wrong about what is on fire. Yeah. And then the things that they think are not on fire are actually on fire. It is amazing how much of a light bulb moment it can be by simply, I guess, light bulb moment, then saying turning the lights on is a little bit too on the nose, but it's really incredible how surprising it can be when these leaders first get a sense for, oh, this is actually my state of affairs. This is my composite view of reality. That's an exciting thing.
Mm-hmm. For sure. So how does your solution then give the insight that people need in terms of how the flow is going through engineering until we get to delivery?
Sure. Yeah, great. And we'll get into the product here with some of these questions now as well, when we're answering, which will be a good way for you to see what we're talking about. But, I like to start by saying we're agnostics. We're agnostic in terms of your data, right? So the structure of your workflow, say you're using Jira or something like ADO, Azure DevOps. We take the approach of ingesting your engineering data from all those disparate tools and popular build tools, et cetera. And then, present that to in the platform in the way of turning the lights on. And so, we have two different modes in the platform that I like to think of in terms of delivery. And so there's, a mode that I like to call, what are we delivering? So what are the initiatives or what are the projects we're working on? When can we expect those to be completed, right? And so you can get a top-down view or a bottoms-up view of the view in the app, which we'll show and talk about as well, which is how do I improve, right? If I've got these metrics and these frameworks and all this data, what can I do with that data to improve? And those are kind of the two modes. And Adam has pulled it up here to kind of talk through and show you some of this in real time.
Yeah, so I mean, we'll do a lot of back and forth on speak to a value proper use case jump into demo, but the initial question was like, all right, so you want to get started. What's happening under the hood? How might we begin to look at the data over time, right? So in this case, let's say you've connected some project management data, again, across not just Jira, but Azure DevOps and GitLab, and right, like there are many different tools that you need to be able to connect into. And then from there, overlay your code data, your deployment data, et cetera, to then tie back to, we always want to tie back to business objectives wherever possible. But the very first thing we asked about was, oh, my process is all over the place. Okay, cool. Do you know what that means? So when you connect your different data sets, can you quickly understand where things spend time? So in this case, all I've done is I've grabbed some project management data, and I've said, for my various teams, isolate it down to those teams in a certain time range. How much time do we spend across our different process stages? So where do things actually sit? What stages don't ever get visited? These are questions that some people might have to take an entire day of just exporting data and trying to run reports to get a real answer on. That's just like the easiest thing in the world to get started on. And that can prompt other discussions, right? And, based on the data that you encounter. And that's where you're really putting a data practice in place, increasingly a data governance practice and a SLA practice in place for large enterprises. And this is all at your fingertips, highly configurable to a level of depth that nobody else can go to.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So what are some of the key metrics that you guys look at and the frameworks that you measure?
Yep, sure. To build upon what Adam just mentioned, we have built the deepest and most configurable solution on the market for this. But a lot of times people are thinking, how do I get started? Most of our customers want that bird's eye view of the popular frameworks that are being adopted across the industry, or at a lot of organizations that you may be at today. DORA, from Nicole Forsgren and Jez Humble and some of these, really, really notable thought leaders in the market. We can do that, right? Space, kind of that more developer-centric productivity and efficiency look, and what I like to think of as like a psychological take. We can do that as well. So DORA, Space, are you focused on flow metrics, right? Maybe SAFe framework is something you've adopted and you're looking really, really closely at the flow of value. We can do that as well. So whether you're doing DORA, Space, Flow, SAFe, we've got you there. And I think that's really cool because this can happen right out of the box. You can begin benchmarking and improving and understand where you're at. And Adam's pulling up now a few of the places that we can go and do that in Allstacks. So if you are thinking and you're one of those people going, how do I get started with these frameworks? This is exactly how easy it is right here.
Yeah, and just imagine you're a leader in a software group. You are trying to bring reality, a view of reality to your broader organization. You're trying to report on how you're focused on value, how you're focused on efficiency, how you're focused on whatever your current key objective really is. And this is basically where we can, from the very first moment you have interaction with Allstacks, you connect some data and we can then drop in the template for, let's just focus on value delivery and predictability, or let's really understand DORA, or the example here of if you're trying to adhere to SAFe and you have a program that's been laid out, like how are we really doing across our PIs? And this is all highly configurable, so we can drop it in automatically, and then you can adjust it till the cows come home, because you have the power at your fingertips throughout the platform.
Mm-hmm. That looks good.
And you can share. I think another thing that jumps out, as I'm looking at this again that you're showing is, you can take these, edit them directly. For instance, maybe you have another team that sees what you're doing. Oh, that's a really cool metric. That's a really cool dashboard. You can take it and clone it and, provide that to other teams as well. So, if you create a benchmark or you create a metric that is particularly useful and valuable, you can start to propagate that across into other areas so that they can benefit as well, which I think is extremely powerful. because everyone's working on different things and they may care about different things, but this can bring these teams together so that they're looking at a unified view and kind of speaking that same language, right?
And an important thing here, and I'll just use a very, very straightforward, everybody understands a velocity metric sort of in the base case.
Yep.
And many will look at this and say, okay, well, that's like downright simplistic. But with Allstacks, you can start from project management data and go toward code data. So I could come in here and say, I want to look at the velocity associated with certain repos,
yep.
right? With certain deployment data. I could start with code data and go toward project management principles that actually tie back into business objectives, my themes, my highest level OKRs in the connected systems, and vice versa, and then build the operational dashboard view and guardrails and all that based on that data. But you don't have a dead end that you hit if you start from code data. You can easily traverse into the other connected systems that really weaves the intelligence together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, this is great. We know that a lot of organizations are collecting all of these metrics and whatever to see where the bottlenecks are and the problems that they're having, and to gain efficiency so they can get a handle on what seems to be working well, where they need to improve. But how does this kind of relate to maintaining accountability, especially around maybe, planned work versus unplanned work, and the impact that might have on the business?
Sure. And just a little plug that there is a poll up right now. So if you're listening and have a second, please do contribute. We'd love to see what your priorities are for this year. And so on the point of, maintaining accountability and driving those healthy behaviors, like you mentioned, Dave, I think, first of all, you got to ask yourself a question. Do you have a shared understanding between, the product and the engineering side in the business? Do you understand where you're investing your time, where you're investing your money, and how you're using your resources, your precious resources? And, things like what initiatives have we pointed at and what have we agreed upon to deliver? What are the most important initiatives to deliver? And are we moving Earth on those projects? It could be at OKR, it could be an initiative, it could be a PI, regardless of what completion.
Okay, having a little connectivity issue.
Might have lost Parker for a second, but it's all good. Jumping off from there on a value delivery focus board. This is like an operational board that we might propagate into any of our partners and customers' experiences, where they very quickly can see, okay, what's the attainment level of my various teams on a sprint or PI basis? And this is how I like to look at our business too. When we talk about our top priorities in our executive leadership team meetings, and then we do our roadmap reviews and we do our external reviews with our customers to say, this is what's important. How does that match up with our effort? And how do I make it so that this data, nobody has to go mine anything to find it? How do you just float this to the top and say, I know that you care about where, understanding where you are focused and what type of work is being completed. How do I make that dead simple and get you back into your day, into your workflows with your team, and use this data inside your various Scrum ceremonies or safe practices to then center on the data and make decisions based upon it. And we love to give I call it like a 360-degree composite view of what is really happening, and then provide you a good window into what is happening versus what you expected to happen. And then to tack onto that, we'll get deeper into the governance and risks stuff. But then to say, all right, when I have aberrations from what I want my norms to be, how do I make sure we get the overall system back in line? And Parker, I can jump into that unless you have any other topic you want to cover here within this realm.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I'll just add on a little bit. I think I lost you just for a second, but I should be back. Sorry about that. But I really thought about not just the rate of completion and velocity and, how are we making progress towards different projects, but what could be blocking our progress, right? And what could be blocking our productivity? And I think that's equally important. And, we've got capabilities right out of the box to establish, those truths and then uphold something like your governance for SLAs or uphold your agreements. And so I think that's equally important and plays really well into what you're showing now, which is, driving those healthy behaviors with risks or guardrails or those kind of working agreements, right?
Yep.
Right. So I noticed in the poll that a number of people saying that they would want to be able to become more measurable and predictable. So how can data help organizations become more predictable with their outcomes?
Yeah. Again, we've talked a lot about what you can do with data and the questions that you ask. And I think that's where I'll start here too, is what is the most important thing? And are we able to focus on that? Right. If I'm an engineering leader and speaking to my teams or I have a seat at the table with leadership, and we then want to be able to replicate where we're successful. Right. And so we want to be able to size the right things and scope the right things and then execute in a repeatable way. And so, consistency breeds predictability, right? And if that's the case, then predictability breeds repeatability. And that's where we want to get, right? So we're repeating our successes. And we use, forecasting and a risk analysis to support that in a very unique way. We've got our own little AI logic in there that helps forecast delivery and when we can expect things to happen based on real historical data. And that can go all the way to the individual commit level. So, are we asking the right questions? And are we able to take action from the data that's in front of us? And so, if we put this dashboard in front of you, do you know what to do with it? And I think that's really, really important. Why did this happen? What can we drill down into? And then, at the team level or the aggregate level, what trends can we pull from those? And what Adam is showing right now is a really, really good look at that first mode of delivery that I was talking about earlier, that kind of what's being delivered, when can we expect it, and what date will it be done?
I think, there's some nuance here. So what we find is people want to be able to commingle different types of objects because newsflash, they don't all adhere to the same structures and fighting the fight of, well, we have to have exactly the same structure all throughout. And that's the only way we'll be able to look at our programs. That's a losing fight because it's taking away from effort to actually run the business on a day-to-day basis. So what we want to say is, well, okay, you want to align on strategic themes or on OKRs or on iteration paths or initiatives. The point of this data being commingled in a somewhat extreme way on this dashboard is to say, we do not care. We will help you get a sense for where you are with whatever data structures you have. We will connect them to the other tools to understand the risk that lives inside the code base, inside the deployment layer, that is tied back to your high level initiatives so that you can then have that very clear conversation, expectation setting session with your key stakeholders, with marketing, with product marketing, with operations, with finance, external to the software team, that's rooted in reality, and it's rooted in your ability to then double click in and say, here's the underlying data, and then even get down into the level of here are the aberrations. So back to the risk, here are things that are sticking out, right? Yep. And how do we get back on track? And you can actually build your own data governance, SLA governance, process governance platform here, where you say, great, I want to be focused on code quality, no wait states, and issue throughput. What does that mean for your organization? We could actually work with you to build these different thresholds where every single time something goes out of band, we'll alert you to that. And what that does is that drives the action down to the lowest level in your organization, to the owners of the individual items and tickets and commits. And from there, it starts to be a self-cleaning system, because then you get to just raise the bar consistently. And these are very, very configurable. And I'll just show you the degree to which you can come in and create your own tolerance level for how you work, not some generic thing that, you know, people say, oh, maybe we should meet that bar. But you look at your data and you say, this is what's true for us. And then how do we get better over time by using this guardrails, you know, tier of the platform?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think one of the things that has been really interesting is that, you know, understanding that the notion of value streams came out of manufacturing, where you were making a widget over and over and over again.
Yep.
So there were very few changes. You would set up your system one time, and that's all you needed. Of course, software, you know, defies all logic, and you know, the complexities involved in creating software really made, I think, the initial uptake of value stream very complicated for people. They didn't understand the lean thinking. They weren't maybe in that headspace. Then they adopted value stream or wanted to and couldn't even figure out, well, what is our value? What does value even mean? It doesn't mean the same thing for every organization. So I think that's been some of the stumbling blocks, and tools, obviously, like Allstacks now help a lot of organizations get over that. And they can see clearly that by collecting the right data and using that information to drive decisions, that they can gain these efficiencies and productivity that they're looking for. Most of the people, in fact, in the poll have indicated that improving efficiency and productivity is the most important thing to them. So
and for this market, for this moment, that makes sense, because that's the stressor that's happening onto these software teams, onto these leaders, from all the stakeholders and from investors and customers.
Yeah, well, it's that drive for speed that people are, you know, they're getting the whip out. You know, we need to go faster, we need to move, and everything that they want to do under that slows things down. So, you know, a wait time. I need somebody to you know, approve my pull request or whatever it is.
Sure.
You know, those are the impediments, and then, you know, being able to identify them, remove them, is where the efficiencies obviously are going to be gained.
Yeah, and it links to developer experience too. You know, that was the one thing that just popped in my head. We started to hear a lot about developer experience about 5 years ago, and it is, you know, it's probably one of the most important topics today, right? You know, I read this wonderful post from a chief research officer at Gardner, where, you know, their inquiries are up, you know, triple digits as far as percentage for developer productivity, and we know that developer experience is directly linked to productivity and efficiency there, right? Kind of that happy cows, happy milk kind of concept. And so we're going to see more of this, right? And so as you're doing more with less, you also got to remember, you know, how can we improve developer experience and make sure that it's a good one for them, because that is linked to, you know, more efficient and more productive.
Absolutely. All right. So I would turn it around now back to you guys, as we're almost up against time, to you know, give us, each of you, give us the key takeaway from today's session, and what people need to know, either to get started or some piece of advice that you would identify as like the most important takeaway. So let's start with you, Adam.
My key takeaway is there are a lot of people talking, using a lot of words, trying to build cases for putting some change management stuff in place to try to move the needle. And actually what you can do instead is get your data hooked up, take a look at what is real, and then react to what is real. And that is a way more satisfying, actually much faster, more efficient way to approach turning these lights on. And our job is to make it dead simple, very fast, and then collaborate over time to get you onto the next biggest problem over and over and over, because this is a learning thing. This is not just a one time you solve a problem and then great, you've arrived, right? That's just not the state of affairs.
Right. Parker?
Yeah, you know, I think of it in three big steps. You've got to, you know, turn the lights on. You've got to be able to see, or else you cannot measure. You know, you've got to be able to extract meaning from your data, and then you've got to be able to take action, right? But that first step is critical and integral, and that's really where Allstacks thrives. And you are being asked to do more with less, and so you've got to figure out how you can slim down wait states, like you mentioned, Dave. That's another big takeaway. We know PR cycle time and code review are the two culprits when it comes to wait states, and so being able to look at engineering work and engineering data like this is important. And the proof is in the pudding. I'll also add one little proof point from a customer of ours who was kind enough to let us share some of their success. And customer England Works started out, and their PR creation time to merge time for one team improved by 60% within the first time of using Allstacks, and then a second team improved by 75% with that same metric. So these are the kind of real results that customers are seeing, and the kind of improvements that I think will be really, really fruitful today.
All right. So Adam Dahlgren, COO at Allstacks, Parker Ennis, Director of Product Marketing. Thanks so much for your time today, fellas. Appreciate it.
We have follow-up lunch and learn demos we've got scheduled. Yep. Parker, how do people find those?
Yep, we will be sending out little email reminders and notes for those that were in attendance. Of course, you can reach out to myself as well, parker.ennis@allstacks if you would like. But we will have a lunch and learn tomorrow, Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern. And then we'll also have one next week if that's too short notice or you're busy. Thursday, June 15th at 1 p.m. Eastern. And either Adam or myself and another colleague will be there, and it'll be very interactive. We'll get into the product. You're free to ask questions and bring anything to the table that you would like answered. And we'll get into it a little bit deeper. So looking forward to that, and would love to see you.
Fantastic. All right.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. My pleasure. I also would like to obviously thank all of our attendees who joined us this afternoon. We're always grateful for your attendance. So thank you very much. So until next time, I'm Dave Rubenstein, Editor-in-Chief of SD Times. So long for now. Thanks, fellas.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, everybody.